What happens when a ruthless gang targets the wrong business owner, mistaking his quiet demeanor for weakness? In the heart of Ashton Hills, a neighborhood clinging to its roots despite growing pressures of gentrification, Marcus Bennett ran his corner store with a sense of pride and purpose. His shop, Bennett's Market, nestled on the corner of Lincoln and Elm, was more than just a place to buy groceries. It was a sanctuary for the community, a place where neighbors greeted each other with familiarity, where kids bought candy with pocket change, and where Marcus kept watch over the well-being of his block. Marcus had a past he didn't often speak of. Years ago, he served as part of an elite tactical unit in the military. His days of adrenaline-fueled missions were behind him, but the instincts and discipline he'd developed never left. Every aisle in his store reflected his meticulous nature, products aligned perfectly, cameras positioned to cover every angle, and locks reinforced against even the most determined intruder. His military precision extended beyond the store to his relationships with his neighbors. Marcus wasn't just a shopkeeper, he was a protector, a confidant, and a friend. It was late afternoon when Marcus first noticed the tension building in the air. Rumors had been circulating for weeks about businesses in the area being targeted, owners pressured to sell or face the consequences. Some had already closed their doors, leaving behind empty storefronts with "for lease" signs hastily slapped on the windows. Marcus had heard whispers of a gang working for developers eager to acquire property at bargain prices. Though he hadn't experienced any trouble firsthand, he'd begun to feel the weight of a storm gathering on the horizon. As the sun began to dip, casting a golden glow over the cracked sidewalks and worn facades of Ashton Hills, Marcus's keen eyes scanned the neighborhood. A young mother wrangled her toddler across the street, an elderly man shuffled by with a cane, and a group of teenagers laughed as they headed toward the park. The rhythm of the neighborhood, its resilience and its struggles, was something Marcus cherished. But tonight, something felt off. The bell above the door jingled as Marcus locked up briefly to count the register. He moved with practiced efficiency, his sharp gaze flicking to the security monitors out of habit. That's when he noticed it. An old black pickup truck idling a block away. The truck's windows were tinted, its engine rumbling low and steady. Marcus tensed but continued his routine, appearing outwardly calm as he completed his tasks. He had no intention of showing fear. Not now, not ever. When he reopened the door, the first man to enter wasn't from the usual crowd of regulars. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his gait casual but deliberate. His name was Vic, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. Behind him were two others, Tommy, stocky and heavyset with a shaved head, and Jared, lanky with a twitchy demeanor that betrayed his nerves. The trio spread out as they entered, their presence heavy with unspoken menace. Vic leaned against the counter, a predatory smirk on his face as he looked Marcus up and down. "Nice place you got here," he said, his tone mocking. "Looks like you're doing pretty well for yourself." Marcus didn't respond right away. He met Vic's gaze with calm, steady eyes, letting the man's words hang in the air. "We get by," Marcus said evenly, his voice devoid of the nervousness Vic might have expected. Tommy wandered down an aisle, his boots scuffing against the floor as he picked up a box of cereal and examined it with exaggerated interest. "Bet business could be better," he said, tossing the box carelessly back onto the shelf. "You know, with the right kind of help." Marcus's eyes flicked to Tommy before returning to Vic. "We don't need any help," he said simply. Vic let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "That's the thing about guys like you," he said, leaning closer. "Always so proud. Think you can handle everything on your own. But pride's expensive, old man. And from where I'm standing, it looks like you can't afford it." Marcus's hand hovered near the counter, close to the silent alarm he'd installed years ago. "Is that so?" he replied, his tone steady. Jared chuckled nervously from his spot near the door. "Man, Vic, this guy's got balls. Standing there all calm like we're just here to buy groceries." "Shut up, Jared," Vic snapped, his eyes narrowing. He turned back to Marcus, his smirk returning. "We're not asking for much. Just a little cut. You know, to make sure nothing happens to this nice little store of yours." Marcus straightened, his expression hardening. "Nothing's going to happen to my store," he said firmly. For a moment, Vic's smirk faltered. but he quickly recovered. "You hear that, boys? He thinks he's untouchable." He nodded to Tommy, who grinned and grabbed a jar of sauce from a shelf. Tommy held the jar up, pretending to examine it. "This stuff's expensive," he said, feigning curiosity. "Think it'll break if I drop it?" Marcus's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to stay composed. "You can leave now," he said, his voice low and steady. "Leave?" Vic said, his smirk widening. "We just got here." Before Marcus could respond, Tommy hurled the jar to the floor, shattering it into a mess of glass and sauce. The sound echoed through the store, drawing the attention of a few passers-by outside. Marcus didn't flinch. He locked eyes with Vic, his voice cold and deliberate. "You're cleaning that up?" Tommy laughed, his boots crunching over the broken glass as he took a step forward. "Oh, I don't think so, old man. But you can clean it up. Isn't that what you're here for?" "Maybe we should chill out," Jared muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "This guy doesn't look like he's going to roll over." "Shut up, Jared," Vic growled, turning back to Marcus. "This guy needs to learn how things work around here. We're doing him a favor, and he's spitting in our faces." "This isn't how things work around here," Marcus said evenly. "And you're not doing me any favors. All you're doing is making a mess. You've already made a mistake coming here. If you come back, it'll be your last." The weight of Marcus's words hung in the air, silencing even Tommy. For a moment, it seemed like Vic might push further, but instead, he motioned to his crew. "Let's go," he said curtly. The three men headed for the door, their departure slow and deliberate, as if daring Marcus to stop them. When the door finally shut behind them, Marcus allowed himself a deep breath. The storm hadn't struck yet, but he could feel it brewing on the horizon. That night, Marcus prepared. He reviewed the security footage, noting every detail about the men who had entered his store, their postures, their movements, the truck they'd arrived in. He knew they'd be back. Men like that never walked away after being challenged. The next day started quietly, the usual rhythm of the neighborhood restoring a sense of calm. But by midday, the low rumble of an engine announced their return. Marcus watched from the security monitor as the same black pickup truck pulled up to the curb. Vic, Tommy, and Jared climbed out, their confidence seemingly amplified. The bell jingled as they entered, and Marcus stepped out from behind the counter, his expression unreadable, but his presence commanding. "Back so soon?" he asked, his tone even. Vic grinned as he approached. "We missed you, Marcus." Marcus didn't reply, his eyes flicking briefly to Tommy and Jared as they spread out. "I think it's time for you to leave," Marcus said. "You think you're tough," Vic said, his grin twisting into a sneer. "Let's see how tough you really are." The tension in the store was suffocating, the air thick with the promise of violence. But Marcus stood firm, his calm gaze unwavering as he prepared for what was to come.